and welcome back to another episode of Subjectively Correct, a podcast where two buddies choose a random theme or subject, then present a movie according to that to each other, and discuss experiences, similarities, and differences. My name is Matt, and with me is my friend Josh.
Hello.
For this episode, the Wheel of Fate decided that we talk about cinematography, which is a very broad term, and we might want to talk about the word itself a little bit first. I think cinematography is often taken as the general visual production of a movie, and I think it's often like conflated with other elements like editing and special effects, maybe even set design. I think a lot of things come together there for a lot of people, but the truer definition, I think, of cinematography, at least for my understanding, maybe you disagree. It's more specifically about handling the camera. It's basically the art of photography at 24 frames a second, I would say. It's about the framing, the movement of the camera, the focus, that sort of thing. You agree?
Yeah. I mean, all those things kind of contribute together. Like, you can't have one without the other, I think. If you've got good editing, good set design, whatever, even visual effects or things like that. But cinematography itself, I think, is like you say, it's like the photography of the film, i.e. the composition of the shots and the visual language of the film more than just the lighting I think it's a very strong part of movies in general because it is everything we see. But I think it is very much tied in with editing and can often get confused for it because, I think editing is obviously just as important or, if not more, to really sell a story and tell a story and, maintain pace and everything. But cinematography is the thing that I find really, it elevates a movie from being like good cinematography elevates a movie from being just like a recording things that are happening in front of the camera versus actually using the camera to make art and tell the story with the camera. Yeah. If that makes sense.
Yeah, good cinematography can make the most mundane situation look really engaging. That's basically it.
Absolutely.
When
I think there's some classic kind of films as well, just before we get on to the ones we brought, that I think of immediately when I think of good cinematography. And usually they're films with like big vistas or, big long shots of beautiful landscapes and things that then tie into stuff like, one of the ones I always think of is Dances with Wolves. I don't know if you've seen that.
No, but I know about it. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And the landscape is very much part of that film, but the way it's shot as well is very kind of all-encompassing and lends to the story and definitely complements and kind of props up the story in that landscape.
Yeah. When I was thinking about this, I had a bit of a hard time of thinking of a movie where cinematography is actually the core event of the production and less the actual subject that is shot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
A lot of times it's more like with the landscape photography, it's more like the locations than the cinematography that really takes the cake, I think. So when we are later talking about my film, I actually specifically tried to reduce as much as possible my pick to cinematography itself. But we're not there yet.
We can talk about if that's effective or not.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I'm looking forward to that. But first, before we go in, I guess I do think we have very different movies, but they both have.
I was going to say.
Yeah, but they both, for lack of a better word, have very eccentric visual choices, I would say.
Yeah. I'd agree with that. I was going to say, the two movies we picked are like at complete opposites of the spectrum.
Totally.
Like, you couldn't get more different.
Yeah.
If you tried, I think. Like, if you were really trying, this is probably what you'd come up with.
Yeah.
Because the film I brought, The Fountain, from 2006, directed by Darren Aronofsky, who's one of my favorite directors, by the by. But we'll get to the the crew and everything in the cast, but the Fountain is like maximalist to the max.
Yeah.
Like everything is turned up to 11. The, even the melodrama of the story is over the top.
Yeah.
And everything in this film is just fucking hitting the ceiling, and as opposed to yours, which we'll talk about more when we get to it, which I feel like just kind of shrinks all the way back into nothingness almost.
Yes.
And I mean that as a compliment.
Okay.
As in it's the complete antithesis to the Fountain.
Yeah.
Where the Fountain is everything's over the top, everything's in your face, it's oversaturated, it's there's loads of effects, there's loads of grand soundtrack swells, and the story itself is this epic kind of over a millennia kind of story, and it's just completely over the top.
Yeah, 100%.
To introduce it anyway, if you haven't seen The Fountain from 2006, it's directed, like I said, by Darren Aronofsky, who I love because he made films like Requiem for a Dream, The Wrestler, Pi, Mother, a bunch of other things. More recently, The Whale, which I haven't seen, but I do want to. He also wrote the screenplay for it and wrote the story, but wrote the story along with someone called Ari Handel.
Yeah.
The film itself has kind of an all-star cast, but not really. Like lots of people you recognize, but it's the two leads are Hugh Jackman, who we all know, and Rachel Weisz, who you probably all know. She's been around in lots of stuff. More recently, I watched her again. I rewatched Constantine, the Keanu Reeves film, like based on a comic book, and she's the female lead in that film. She's also in films like Enemy at the Gates. She does a couple of French films as well, because I think she speaks French, just herself anyway. Also, we've got other people like Ellen Burstyn, who's also in Requiem for a Dream. She plays the mother.
Oh, yeah.
Mark Margulies, Stephen McHattie, and a lot of people whose names I don't recognize personally, but faces. They show up and you're like, oh, I know that dude. Like, I've seen him before, or her, or whoever. So, it's one of those films where kind of everyone you see, you go, oh, yeah, they're not new to me kind of thing. And incidentally, this is, I think, perhaps my favorite Hugh Jackman performance ever, because I'm not the biggest Hugh Jackman fan, to be fair. Like, he's done a lot of films where I'm just like, whatever. But this one, I feel like he really kind of shows why he's a good actor in a lot of ways. But going back to cinematography, the Fountain cinematographer is a guy called Matthew Libatique, who has worked with Darren Aronofsky a lot because he worked on Requiem for a Dream and Pi, and he did Black Swan as well, which has got some beautiful cinematography in it, I think. So he's definitely someone to pay attention to, I think, because he's got some chops, and when he's allowed to kind of do something a bit more artistic or be a bit more of a photographer, he kind of rolls with it, I think. So the story of The Fountain is essentially the fountain of youth, hence The Fountain. And it's a story that's kind of split into three different stories where over time. So there's one from the when the Spanish Inquisition is happening back in history, and I forget who it is, but basically the Queen of Spain, who played by Rachel Weisz, sends a conquistador, but played by Hugh Jackman, over to South America, where they have, conquered the new land and all that kind of thing, to go on a holy quest to basically find the tree of life that is said to be located, somewhere in the jungles of South America. Cut to modern day kind of times, where, again, Hugh Jackman and Rachel Weisz play two people who are a couple. And we learn throughout the film, minor spoilers here, of course, as always. Yeah. But we learn throughout the film that Rachel Weisz's character has a brain tumor, and Hugh Jackman's character is a scientist or a surgeon / researcher, whatever, who's trying to find a cure for this brain tumor to save his wife. And then the final period is kind of, infinite time in the future when you kind of get the impression that all life on Earth has finished, and
they actually
and
have
there's Hugh Jackman
year. It's apparently 2,500 the year.
Oh, really?
It's not. I thought it was way further as well, but it's I guess not. Right. Sorry.
I mean, it might as well be infinite. I think either way, because it's kind of like You've got a Hugh Jackman again is playing a character who I think is just referred to as the Traveler or something like that. And he's essentially zooming through space inside a sphere, which is no bigger than, say, your backyard, and is him and the Tree of Life itself cruising through space. And there's a reason, there's a place, there is a direction he's going and a place he's trying to get to for similar reasons. And the way these three stories kind of connect is because there's even a question of perhaps the characters in each story are exactly the same characters too, just at different periods in time, because you kind of get the impression that especially Hugh Jackman's character has lived throughout all of this time since being a conquistador, 1,000 years ago or whenever, and found the Tree of Life and has been perhaps immortal forever then, until he's like zooming through space as this kind of enlightened being, trying to find, the end of existence or whatever it is. So yeah, very big themes, very big, epic kind of story, I guess, and things to tackle, because it ends up being a story. I think it ends up being a story about, with very existential kind of focus, and it's a story about, I think, fate and humans and relationships and humanity and what matters in life and what the point of life is, as well as what the point of death is, because these things are discussed a lot throughout. And to go back to the cinematography, just to speak on that for a second, one thing I do love about this film, and the reason it came to mind with cinematography, was because on one hand, yes, I think there's great editing, there's awesome visuals, there's a lot of wicked like special effects and things, there's lots of great set design that ties in between all different stories that tie the sets together, and there are all these little things. But then there's heaps of cool, I think, repeated kind of cinematography motifs where there's lots of just kind of static horizontal tracking shots. There's lots of there's a lot of angles that are just from directly overhead, which kind of speak to part of what they're telling about the story, because it's like the zenith of existence and the end of all things is kind of always over their heads. And sometimes they're ignoring it, sometimes they're going towards it, that sort of thing. But it kind of has that omnipresent kind of feel as the observer observing these scenes and this story. And yeah, so there's lots of like very deliberate camera moves as well. There's like one particular shot that kind of gets used a couple of times is, let's say there's a car driving down a road. It starts off with the car kind of driving upside down. Yeah. And as it passes the camera kind of goes with it and turns a full 180 degrees until it's, driving away from it then. And it does that once with a car. It does it once with a horse, I think.
Yeah.
And I think it does it again with the guy in space, if I remember correctly, but either way. But there's like things like that get repeated, which I think is part of the charm of the cinematography, because not only do I think all the framing and everything is really good, and the photography itself and the visual language of the film is very strong, those sorts of repeated motifs as well are a great way to tie together such a dissonant and disparate story that takes place over such a large amount of time, with such huge gaps in between, and potentially a lot of like question marks, as in things we don't know about the story, like I say, going in between. Like, are these different characters, or are they actually the same characters, or, so on and so forth, which is never, explicitly answered, although I think it's fairly hinted at anyway. But yeah, that's my little summary of The Fountain. I'm obviously a big fan. I love the shit out of this film. There's, just as an aside before we get to you, Matt, interestingly, there are a few shots in this film that have become memes. Like, there's one from the very end of the film where Hugh Jackman's character is like looking up at a very bright light, and there's wind like blowing all his hair away and everything, and he's having this kind of revelatory moment. That is a gif that I've seen around so many times.
Okay, yeah, I could see that.
And much like other Darren Aronofsky films, this is quite divisive, I think, because people tend to either love it or hate it, I find. So yeah. Anyway, I will shut up now, and I'm keen as always to hear your take, Matt, and what you thought about this movie.
Yeah, this one being divisive is definitely something I had on my mind as well. I've heard about that a lot before. I did I did mean to watch this on my own anyway, though. So I don't feel any regret of you making me watch this or whatever. But yeah, Aronofsky is a lot of hit or miss for me as well. Like I liked Black Swan, The Whale, The Wrestler Pie. Those are very cool. I did not at all like Requiem for a Dream. I know that's a hot take, I think. And
Damn.
and Mother, I thought was pretty meh. Uh,
Damn.
yeah. So Aronofsky can work or not at all. So I did not actually know what to
Wrong.
expect for.
No, sorry, go on, please.
I didn't know what to expect from the phone if anything was possible really, but yeah, I think I'll have to disappoint you a bit again once more because I don't think I vibed with this movie that much, which yeah, is partially because of the maximalist visuals, I believe. I mean, not that maximalist visuals are per se something bad. We have watched like uh even Hero, which you brought on another episode, which has arguably maximalist visuals, and there it worked really, really well for me. But I think here the visuals were too visual effects heavy and in a collage way. For me, especially in the 2500 parts, the futuristic parts in space, especially there, the different visual elements didn't really blend together for me, and there was a lot of corny or tacky things going on that I couldn't really take seriously, unfortunately. Plus, the story.
Well, like what? Because I'm interested to know why or
you
what.
know the guy, Hugh Jackman's character floating around in the air in his Buddhist pose, or like at the very end being. In hindsight, I kind of love the shot where he is ascending into the nebula, and all his clothes fly off, and then he's like zooming out into the space. I can't take it seriously. I think it's just a thing. That's just one of the things why it's so divisive. Either for people, it works as a visual representation of the themes and whatnot, as a dramatic, theatric way to conclude this very maximalist, esoteric, epic story, or it doesn't. And I think yeah, I'm in a second camp probably. It's also for me a personal thing because immortality as a subject itself is not something I can relate to much, especially there are
I don't think anyone can relate to
no,
immortality.
no, but like the wish for it, or like I mean that's one of the themes, right? The hope for immortality to cure death, especially with the present time storyline with Hugh Jackman as the doctor trying to save his tumor-ridden wife.
Yeah.
I could not at all relate to his grief, his flavor of grief, because of course it's understandable to not want your loved one to die, but to me it felt like his entire grief was more based on a lack of control and less on the potential loss of his wife. And
Well, I think, but to speak on that though, like he's so desperately trying to save her, and he has the tools to do so. Like it's not a foolish errand. Like, you know, by the end he figures out how to do it, but it's too late. And so like, he's very much able to do it. So he's so desperate to do it because he knows that he can, and he loves her so much that he doesn't want to even think about failing because he knows that there's that solution available to him. But and yes, his desperation clouds him and makes him make bad decisions and stuff because he basically ignores the fact that she's dying.
Yeah.
And you know, that obviously is not good. But that's kind of the whole driven theme behind that period of his character, I think, like, is the fact that you've got to suspend some disbelief, obviously, like anything, but his whole thing is that he knows he can do this, especially if you consider him being the same character from the first part as well, because he's already, you know, tasted immortality, so he knows he can cure death in that sense. He's just trying to figure out how to do it on a more controlled way, you know.
But
So I thought that was very, very relatable.
I don't think he should, though. I don't think he should. And I think the movie itself makes the point as well, to give it credit. I think the movie itself makes the point as well that he should have listened to his wife more instead of trying to fix this problem, right? So it's not something that I'm like inventing right now, but yeah, I just had real trouble being engaged by the character, I guess. He just should have let her fucking die and just be with her and not waste his time with this solution that he's so obsessed with.
But that's where I thought the end of the film then is so brilliant as well, because after all that time, after all that, you know, journeying and, you know, maintaining his life and all this kind of stuff, the very end revelation that he basically, his moment of enlightenment is the idea that no, death is actually good.
Yeah.
And he says thank you for letting me die after all this time of immortality.
I think
that's why we flash back to the original conquistador, who it's like he made a different decision and he ends up not getting eternal life and he ends up dying anyway.
True.
And you know, I think that's kind of part of the whole point of the story is to you even if you chase after all this stuff and like fight existence, actually that's not good, and there is something to be like part of life is to die, you know.
Yes,
so
I do believe that is. I do believe that is probably the aim of the story, and that I'm probably not actually that far off from what the story is trying to tell. But I think my problem is that it's I mean, it is super esoteric and vague, which is not a problem in itself, but I can't talk. But matched with the very theatrical and melodramatic presentation of it is a match made in hell for me, I think. I think that's none of these two elements in itself would bother me that much, but putting that together it makes me check out really quick, I think. And the ultimate lesson of death is good actually is not grand enough for me to justify, in quotes, justify or whatever, the presentation that I personally don't vibe with anyway. So it's very much a cup of tea kind of thing. I'm not blaming this movie for doing something like bad or whatever. But I have to be honest that for me, I don't think this one worked too well. That being said, there's still the cinematography, aside from the eccentric visual effects that I didn't like that much. I do agree that there were a lot of cool shots when it comes to just the handling of the camera. It's funny that especially the recurring shot that you mentioned with the camera starting upside down, following a moving subject, and with that turning back into a regular, not upside down, whatever, right way around. Especially that shot, there was actually one that I was going to mention because that was one of the stronger ones. Also, the Tree of Life in the like square pool near the end looked amazing. I liked that sort of thing.
Yeah.
There were definitely things in here that I liked a lot visually. I think it's the overall package that made me mentally check out.
And to focus on cinematography more than anything as well, like you're wrong about all the other stuff, but anyway. One thing I really liked about the cinematography itself as well, you've got all this maximalist side of life that we've talked about. Like there's the effects, there's the epic story, there's even the soundtrack I think is really good, but maximalist as well. And, you know.
The soundtrack is good, actually.
All that kind of thing. But then one thing I do love about this film is, especially with the cinematography, there's a lot of intimacy in the film because there's so many like super close up, almost macro shots of different things. Like there's a recurring motif of Hugh Jackman's character speaking to the tree, and there's like these little hairs on the tree that kind of respond to his touch and his movement. And so you get like a close-up shot of just his lips kind of thing and these hairs on the edge of this tree. And that's repeated in some like intimate moments with his wife and some other bits here and there. And there's a lot of just very, very, very tight kind of shots on faces or single points of touch or things like that, which I think bring an intimacy to such a magnificently over-the-top story that, you know, I think it's very much driven by the cinematography, because it's those sorts of decisions which you could have just shot it from a little way back to show what's happening. But by getting into this really close, really tight, almost macro kind of level photography, I feel like it brings us that much needed, I think, intimacy to kind of balance out all the other maximalist kind of stuff as well.
No, yeah, I agree with that. Those there was some cool practical effect stuff there as well that I liked, actually.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's
yeah.
Well,
and I think
yeah, go on.
Go on, sorry.
No, you go first.
I was just going to say, I think even as divisive as this film is, I think it is widely agreed that it is known for its cinematography. Like if you Google films with great cinematography, like this one kind of shows up in there. So I think, if not, aside from anything else, I think critically it is very lauded for its visuals in that sense, like, and it's camera work.
Yeah.
Because like you say, there's lots of cool sets and everything, and there's effects and things which you may or may not like. Like I quite like especially the in space kind of not just like one source of light, but fucking billions of them. And, because it is that kind of end of the spectrum kind of experience, I think, that they're trying to portray. So, and I think that's cool how that's then reflected in scenes like when they're in Spain and the conquistador goes to meet the queen for the first time, and he walks into this room, which is basically lit around the edges by all these candles.
Yeah.
And it almost looks like a void with stars in them. It very obviously speaks to the visuals of the space kind of environment. And then there's other scenes in the modern day where there's some candlelit areas where the candles again look like stars in the sky, because you can't see the rest of the scene and it looks like they're floating in a void. And so there's a lot of like through lines with the visual language as well, which I think is all combination of, obviously set design and editing and cinematography and effects or whatever else. But I think it all works really well together to, have a very cohesive language in the film, visually at least.
Now, here's my question to you. I assume you have seen this multiple times already.
Yeah.
Did you like it as much as you do now on your very first watch? Or was it a gradual
to be fair,
thing? Yeah.
I've always loved it.
Okay.
But for different reasons.
Oh.
So the first time I watched it, it wasn't as granular of a interest that I now have. Like I watched this again today before we recorded. Earlier today I watched it in preparation for this. And watching it today, I definitely picked up on things that I hadn't picked up on before. And perhaps maybe I was just paying more attention to it. I'm not sure. Because I was thinking about it as well in the terms of cinematography and that sort of stuff, while already knowing the story and already knowing the main beats and that kind of thing. There were a few things I actually forgot about it. So I think initially when I liked it, the stories can be a bit hard to kind of grasp initially or to really follow 100%. But on subsequent watchings, and I've probably watched this film about 4 or 5 times over the years, because it's one that I do enjoy putting on every now and then. But I haven't really dug under the skin of it too far before, say, when I watched it most recently today. Because today I was watching it and like kind of like really just dialed in and, watching every moment of it and, thinking about it really not deeply, but, intensely.
Okay.
Intently.
Yeah.
Actively. And so, yeah, it has been a different experience every time I've watched it. Partly because in subsequent watches, obviously, I do know more about the film every time. But I do think, I kind of hate it when people say this, but I do think there is stuff to unpack more the more you do watch it.
I do believe that.
At least for someone like me, because I don't pick up on everything on the first time through anyway. And I think there is a lot here that you can get stuck into if you want to. And I'm the kind of person that I love if it's something I like and I rewatch it, I love really getting into those nitty gritties and picking up on little things that I go, ooh, that's actually pretty cool. And maybe that's a symbolism of this or a metaphor for that or, whatever. But, which as opposed to other films, like especially Aronofsky films, like, a lot of people don't like the film Mother that he did.
Mm-hmm.
I fucking love it.
Mm-hmm.
And, but the first time I watched that blew my mind. I loved everything about it. It was amazing. But every subsequent watch, it gets less of an impact because I know what's coming, kind of thing.
Okay, yeah.
The first time I watched it, I knew nothing about the film, which I think was in my favor because if I knew ahead of time what it was about, I might have had more of a not as good a reaction like a lot of other people did.
Mm-hmm.
But I just kind of watched it. I thought it was actually a film about robots or something because I just had the wrong end of the stick.
That's good. I loved it.
which for anyone who hasn't seen Mother, it ain't about robots.
No. It's about the Bible.
That's where it was a very surprising film for me, not just because it went against my expectations, but it took me probably half the film to actually figure out what was going on.
Why?
And then once it clicked, it was like that moment of complete joy of just going, and everything makes sense. And I can see what's happening now. And I'm along for the ride. And I'm like, fucking take me there, daddy. We can do it.
Yeah.
And so I think this film in particular is perhaps a bit of the opposite of that, where it's not as blatant of an analogy as something like Mother.
Yeah.
But it's much more kind of, like you say, a bit more esoteric, a bit more open for interpretation in a lot of ways. So on subsequent watches, I get more and more out of it as a result, I think. So
yeah, no, that's what I thought. This very much seems like the kind of movie that you would get more out of on rewatches. So who knows? Maybe if I watch it 100 times, I might like it. But I doubt it. I mean,
but that's why I hate it when people say that anyway, because it's like, no, it should stand on its own. Like I hate it if I don't like a film, someone says, well, you just got to watch it like 5 times before you really understand it. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, fuck off. I'm never watching that again. Because what a dumb, way to make a film.
Yeah.
Or tell a story. Because I think of it all as like storytelling, on whatever level. Whether it's visual, audio, the actual script, the acting, everything. It's just storytelling.
Yeah.
And if you have to tell me a story 10 times, like you have to tell me it 10 times before I get it, it's obviously not for me. If I like it initially and I want you to tell me it again, and then I get more out of it when you tell it to me again because I'm so into it anyway, that's different. That's like, okay, cool. I'm enjoying myself.
Yeah.
But like the need to watch things multiple times is like, nah, sorry. that shit don't fly.
Yeah, that's reasonable. I think that makes sense. Yeah, I mean, to be fair though, I am exaggerating a bit with my opinion. I don't hate this like entirely or whatever, if I make it sound like that. But yeah, there's probably not enough for me to entice me to give this more of a watch. So I probably will never experience the joy that you would do.
Well, and I think it's relevant this week as well because, I've got opinions on your film.
Yeah, I'm excited for that.
Which we'll get to in a sec. But
yeah.
I think part of the whole reason we decided to record these discussions a bit was because I always enjoyed looking at your reviews on Letterboxd.
Yeah.
Whenever I post my reviews for something that you've already seen, and just how different some of our opinions would be.
Yeah.
And I'd see you'd love it or hate it, and I'd be like, what?
What are you talking about? Yeah.
This is ridiculous. And I do think, I don't understand or get your reasons for not loving The Fountain. I'm going to be honest. I don't get it. You're speaking funny talk as far as I'm concerned. But, that's the joy of being subjectively correct anyway. So
it sure is, man.
So put a number on it and we'll wrap this up.
Dude, I think I'm gonna be fair and square in the 5 out of 10 for this one.
Yeah, right. Straight down the middle.
Yeah, I think that's where I land. I'm assuming you are close to the 10.
This is 10 out of 10 for me.
Oh my
I
God.
can't fault it.
Shit, dog.
Yeah.
Is there not a single thing that you would have preferred to be different?
No.
Damn, son.
No, I mean, I think it's perfectly cast. I think it's really well paced. Like, it feels a lot. It's only like an hour and 40, I think, is the runtime. To me, it feels like there's a lot more in it than that. Like, it feels like a longer film, but not because it's boring, like because it's just so dense. Like, there's a lot going on, but it also doesn't feel rushed or, I think the pacing's really good, essentially, overall.
That is actually something I do commend this movie for having such grand themes, but it's still being contained within a regular feature-length runtime.
Yeah, and I think that, is something to be proud of if you are an editor or a writer or a director or anyone making a film, because I think it's very easy to make like the 3.5 hour long epic. Not very easy, but it's much harder to then take that film and tighten it up to an hour and a half and still have it, feel just as impactful and epic, I guess, in a way.
Yeah, for sure.
It's the whole reason I'm not a big fan of the whole Snyder cut of superhero films and stuff, because it's like they're like, oh yeah, he managed to fit so much more in than the previous version. I'm like, yeah, because he added 2 hours to the fucking thing.
Yeah,
I'm like, is that clever directing or is that just poor editing? Like,
yeah.
Anyway, discussion for another time.
Snyder.
But yeah, definitely this one's a 10 out of 10 for me because I absolutely love it. I will probably rewatch it again and again. Whenever I forget every little detail about it, I'll watch it again and enjoy it. And yeah. And seriously, Darren Aronofsky is one of my favorite directors, and the crew he works with are obviously up there as well because, yeah, his films are pretty much always a hit for me, and I don't think they've ever been a miss.
You know what I'm realizing right now, thinking about Aronofsky? I think The Whale, which you haven't seen yet, it has somewhat similar visuals in some regards, but the story, of course, is much more contained. And I wonder if that,
right.
like,
so I don't know anything about The Whale.
Yeah,
either,
you need to watch that, obviously. Yeah, and The Whale really worked for me. So I wonder if that did something right for me that The Fountain kind of failed. I don't know, but there's some similarities.
I mean, and his films can be quite diverse. Like I think The Wrestler, which is an amazing film, is again very different visually and stylistically to. You could look at all these wacky films like this one, or like Requiem for a Dream, or Mother, or even Pi. Like they're very strong, creative works, I think. And Black Swan, he's known for these very strong visual styles, but then he makes something like The Wrestler, which I think is unanimously regarded as an excellent film. But that's much more character focused and minimalist, I guess, in that sense, because it keeps everything very simple and humble. And so I think good on him as a director, because he might have ruined it if he tried to like throw in too much over the top shit for that particular type of story.
Which is funny, considering how over the top wrestling is a lot of the time.
Well, exactly, but that's not what that story was about.
No, totally.
And so yeah, one thing I always think is a good sign though is when you get these directors who tend to work with the same actors again, like multiple times, or the same crew members over and over again. Not because I think that shows in a good way that they're obviously, at the end of the day, when their team like doing what they're doing, and as creatives, they kind of work well together. Otherwise, why the hell would you keep working with the guy? So I always like that kind of thing where you can kind of see a little team of people who continue making stuff. It's kind of like, Tim Burton's got his team.
Just like Adam Sandler's
Danny
group
Elfman
of Jokers.
Yeah. Adam Sandler's got his group. But you know what I mean? Like,
yeah, I know.
They're onto something that works and obviously is enjoyable to do. So whether you like it or not, like I fucking hate Adam Sandler, but
we can agree.
But anyway, again, discussion for another time. Let's move on to your film.
Yes. Oh my God. So my film, which is going into the completely different direction than The Fountain, as we already mentioned, is Skinamarink from 2022. It's very recent. Directed by Kyle Edward Ball, an indie director who didn't do any other feature-length productions yet. Also written by Kyle Edward Ball, starring in total like 4 people, none of which you ever see like the face, I don't think. Just for completionist's sake, there's Lucas Paul and Dali Rose Tetrold, who play the 2 main characters. And there's Ross Paul and Jamie Hill, who play minor characters. There's only really 4 people here. Cinematography by a guy called Jamie McRae. At least I think it's okay. By a person called Jamie McRae. I can't assume whatever. Who also like not like a huge name or whatever. This is very much a small indie production. And in those kind of circles, it did make a lot of waves back when it came out. I remember there was quite the hype for this. I'm not exactly sure where it started, but when Skinamarink came out, people online, at least in certain circles again, really were all about this, which is probably because Skinamarink is very much leaning hard into a lot of elements of typical internet horror stories. The plot of Skinamarink is extremely simple and maybe also vague, because this is literally just about 2 kids waking up in the middle of the night and discovering that all windows and doors leading outside have disappeared, and also their father went missing. And that is it. The entire movie is basically them stumbling around their dark apartment and, I don't know, doing whatever and being scared by the freaky vibes. The plot really isn't the main attraction here at all. Skinamarink is wholeheartedly, I would say, a visual mood piece, as the entire presentation is, again, very much leaning into. I think it's channeling old internet horror. It's channeling old crusty 240p screamer videos on YouTube, if anyone's familiar with those back in the days. It's channeling the recent wave of like analog horror that is very popular right now, and liminal spaces. All of these, I don't know if any of this really means anything to you, but this is all the themes that this movie is probably channeling and why this was such a big deal, because people love that shit right now. It is like a lot of creepypastas, like stories that are posted online, horror stories that are posted online. A simple concept with creepy vibes. And it's all about the presentation here, which is why I chose this for the cinematography category. Lots of this movie is static shots of very dark corners of very mundane apartment rooms. It's very grainy, it's very dark. You often don't see exactly what's going on. And the entire plot, really, 90% of the plot that there is, happens like to the side of it. It's never in the focus of the actual visuals. It happens all like in the corner of your eye, that sort of thing, which all adds to this fever dream kind of atmosphere. And here's the thing with this movie. I love this movie in concept because I'm a huge sucker for this kind of mainly photography. I like this sort of visual art where people take a very mundane everyday locations or objects, like the random corner in your room that you never look at or whatever, and like capture them in an unusual way that makes them interesting or seem a bit strange, even though there's nothing strange going on. And this movie is banking on that wholeheartedly. But of course, then adding a couple of supernatural things here and there. The thing though with this movie is that this probably didn't need to be a 90-minute movie. I think this probably, and I don't know. I have expectations to what you feel about this movie, and you probably would agree here that this movie would probably work better as a short film, because while the visuals, at least to me, are interesting, they do not hold the attention enough for full 90 or 100 minutes, it says here on my screen. And even further than that, I would probably even prefer this to be just a still photo picture book for my coffee table or whatever. But here's the thing with art. Sometimes, at least I experience this a lot, sometimes while the final product doesn't like hit the mark or whatever, it's still the concept and attempt at it that is super cool to me. And even if like this movie as a movie isn't the greatest thing ever, I love that they tried this and pulled this through. There are no corners cut. The entire movie is uh yeah, these very minimal shots of these dark rooms without any grand additions or whatever. Every now and then there's a bit of a special effect or whatever, but it's most of the time, it's incredibly subtle. Most of the film is static shots. Every now and then there's some camera movement. There's a specific sequence in the bedroom of the parents, which I actually adore. That sequence in itself is probably maybe my highlight in this film. It probably could stand on its own.
It's definitely a standout, yeah.
Yeah. I also love, I don't know if you remember or noticed this, the very final shot, which is all darkness, super grainy darkness, with the vaguest outlines of a face poking out from the darkness and telling you to go to sleep. Incredibly like creepy pasta coded, if that says anything to anybody. There's some super cool visuals. I love the atmosphere. It's just, it didn't have to be a feature-length movie, I don't think. And I'm knowing that you are very picky about your horror films, if you care to watch them at all. I have a feeling I know what you're gonna say, but I'm super curious to hear what your thoughts were with this thing.
Well, interestingly, I'm really glad you explained it in the way that you did, because I feel like that made me understand things a little bit better. Because, well, first off, I 100% agree. If this was a 10-minute short, I would have been like, cool, great short film, great concept, nice execution. Well done, guys. Pat on the back. See you later. Hour and a half film? Fuck me. But that aside, you know, I get that could just be a taste thing, whatever, doesn't matter. A couple of other short little points to kind of get out of the way, I guess. As a horror film and as someone who's not a horror film fan, I didn't find this scary at all.
Okay.
I didn't, you know, I get the idea. I've watched other similar films with similar kind of styles and that sort of thing. And yeah, didn't find them too scary either. So obviously that style of scares don't really bother me. Although one thing that did bother me about the scariness, if we look at it from just a horror film, was the jump scares.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I was about to mention them too.
Because
unnecessary.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of it, I think, because you know the whole film is sitting there watching basically nothing happen.
Yeah,
and then a loud dissonant noise plays, like static from a TV, and you hear a scream, and the screen flashes something. So obviously, it makes you jump.
Yeah.
So you know, well done, you did it.
No.
But I don't consider that scary. That's like, yeah, you made me jump. All right. Of course you did, because you surprised me more than anything. Like
startled.
You did something unexpected, you know. Yeah, you startled me. That's the perfect word. But what I think is really interesting, and I think worth talking about before necessarily going in depth about my own opinions, is what you say about how this reminds you of that particular period in time of internet kind of media, where you say like creepypastas and certain types of YouTube videos and all that kind of thing, which I think is very interesting, because I do not have any reference to that. As in, there's no period in time that this reminded me of. There's no... what this reminded me of essentially was found footage horror films. And so I immediately compared it to things like Blair Witch, which I remember happening at the time when that was new. And that was like a phenomenon at the time when it was released. Like there was even serious discussion about whether it was actual found footage or not. That's how well they marketed that film. And it was early days of the internet, and the people who made the Blair Witch put up all these websites and stuff with all this history about the Blair Witch and, you know, all this other stuff. It was like a big ARG when they released it. Before we knew what an ARG was, kind of thing. Like they kind of helped invent the whole thing. And so that was like a phenomenon in itself. And so everything basically that came after that for me that looks like found footage or is, you know, low quality or handycam or home movie style film, I'm always going to compare to the Blair Witch just because that's what's hard coded in my brain, which, you know, isn't necessarily, it's not like the Blair Witch is perfect and therefore everything else looks bad. It's just that's the category I put it into, not what you talk about with this kind of moment in internet history kind of category. Like that doesn't even occur to me because like I'm aware of like SCPs and stuff and I think it's cool and fascinating, but I never really was into it. You know, when that stuff was popular, I was doing other things. It's just a period in time that didn't mean much to me. Either maybe my age, maybe just what I was doing at the time. I don't know. For whatever reason, I can't connect with it on a personal level. So until you started explaining it that way, I had no appreciation of that at all. So that's what I mean by saying I'm really glad you did explain it that way, because now I kind of, a penny drops and I'm like, I get it.
Hell yeah.
I get why someone would be into this film.
Yeah. Intellectually, you get it.
Yeah. Prior to that, I'm thinking, why would anyone like applaud this at all for existing? Like, it's a student film that someone released.
Yeah.
And it doesn't deserve any kind of accolades more than good on you, you made a film, because that in itself is a difficult thing to do. Or, you know, it takes a lot of project management and stuff and effort.
Yeah.
So good on you. Everyone involved, you made a film. Well done. Now go make a good one. And and that's what I mean by this. Yes, if it was a 10-minute short with some of those cool shots, like the bedroom scene where the kid's walking in and trying to talk to his parents. And, you know, that was pretty creepy. I enjoyed that. Like the whole, you know, the dad's just, or whoever, one of the parents is sitting there.
The mother,
And all they say is look under the bed and you're like, oh, fuck, great.
And just super slow, super quiet.
Yeah. And I love that it takes its time. I love that it, you know, does all that stuff. I can dig that. And like I say, it would be a great short film.
Yeah.
If that, let's say it's a 10-minute film and that was like 5 minutes of the 10, that would be awesome.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I'd probably be applauding it for being a great little horror short film. But to kind of cut to the chase without that context and with it being a bit longer, and from where I'm coming from as a audience member, I did not. I'm surprised I've even had any nice things to say about it, put it that way.
Just on a visual level
okay, let's
alone.
talk about cinematography.
Yeah, is this doing anything for you? Be honest.
Well, I mean, honestly, no.
Yeah, okay.
I want to bookend that by saying I am also a fan of very abstract art. I'm a fan of, you know, like you say, those photos which are just kind of not the norm, like different kind of compositions and different subject matters and stuff, like very mundane subject matters even, or anything like that. Like recently, as we record this, just to date it as well. I don't know if you've kept up with this, Matt, but recently a French artist, I think, sold a banana that was sticky taped to a wall for $6.2 million.
Yeah.
Through auction. Some Bitcoin billionaire bought it. And it's made the news because it's literally a banana with duct taped to a wall.
Yeah.
And everyone's like, that's not art. Fuck that shit.
Yes, it is.
Personally, I appreciate the artistic side of that.
Yes, me too.
And I like it. and I'm all for it. I'm one of the people going, yep, that's cool. The bit I don't like about it is that someone can just throw $6 million at it. I mean, fucking spend your money on something a bit more useful, my dude.
Yeah.
And like, I love it as art. I hate it as a commercial property.
Yeah.
So anyway, moving away from that, like I say that as a way to explain that I love all that kind of abstract shit that a lot of people will say, oh, that's not art, that's bullshit. Rah, rah, rah.
Yeah.
I'm the guy who'll be like, nah, it's cool. Let's check it out. But I'm also the kind of person who thinks there has to be a point to it that is understandable or that you can interpret in some way. And that's kind of, again, a thing I struggled with this film was a lot of the composition and, you know, the actual cinematography in the film and the cool abstract kind of angles and stuff. It was cool for about 5 minutes, and then the novelty wore off real quick.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, this is not serving the film at all. It's not helping me enjoy it. It's not making me want to see more. I'm actually quite bored right now because it's the same thing recycled throughout the entire film. And once you've seen one static shot of a hallway that you can't really see because it's so dark, you've seen them all, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And you know,
I mean, what gives us a bit of an extra thing that I think it's interesting is the idea of attempting to tell a story without ever showing the subjects in full frame. And I like that idea. Did that do anything for you? I guess not.
I mean, like you said before as well, like it's a cool idea.
Yeah. There you go. Okay.
But again, pop it in a 10-minute short story then.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know, it's a nice idea, but the idea wears out real quick. Like,
yeah,
it's only got a certain amount of staying power, which isn't for the whole film, I think. Kind of like how, well, again, I went into this completely blind. All I knew was that it was a horror film because you told me it was.
Yeah.
So I like prepared myself for that, knowing how scared I can get of horror films.
Yeah.
But other than that, I just went into it blind and just watched it. And
shit.
So I until I read about it afterwards, because I actually Googled it, I had no idea what the whole thing was about either. Like, I didn't pick up on the fact that all the doors were missing and all the windows were missing. I didn't pick up on that even the parents were missing. All I got was that there were some kids who were up in the middle of the night, watching TV, playing with some toys, and a creepy voice telling them to do weird shit like stab themselves in the eye and that kind of thing.
Right.
And yeah, that's creepy and all, but the narrative was just so flimsy and disjointed, and that's cool if that's like the point. But I don't feel like it was the point, because when I Googled it very quickly, I was told about all this plot stuff that was meant to be in there.
Oh yeah, and I don't even know.
You know, well, like all that stuff we just mentioned, like the doors missing, the windows missing, the parents missing, all this kind of stuff. None of that came through in the actual film itself to someone who didn't know that going in, kind of thing. And it reminded me of stuff that I didn't like, which is kind of things that are like, it has a creepy vibe purely for the sake of having a creepy vibe and nothing else going on at all, kind of thing. To me, and again, this might piss people off because, again, this is a divisive thing. I hate it, but to me, it's like the vaporwave of movies.
You hate vaporwave?
I fucking can't stand it. It's shit music for the purposes of sounding like shit music.
What the fuck?
Like, well, and again, I think it comes from lived experience a bit more, because it's kind of like synthwave music that people make today. It's all meant to harken back to some 80s idea of electronic music and stuff. Fucking go put on some 80s records. They sound nothing like synthwave. Like,
no, it's a new spin on it.
I like synthwave. No, don't get me wrong. I like synthwave, but having lived through the 80s, it does not remind me of the 80s at all.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it sounds nothing like the music of the 80s or the soundtrack of the 80s as I know it. So it's this kind of, again, like a faux nostalgia of something that doesn't exist, built by someone new, kind of thing. It's like fashion, how fashion goes in circles as well. Like, most recently, the 90s have been back in fashion for the last 5 years or so, at least around my way. I don't know about the rest of the world, but it's hilarious because I see these kids, and I'm sure people did it when I was a kid too, because when I was a kid, it was like 70s fashion was kind of back in. And my folks are like, you fucking idiots. That's 70s shit. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And now I'm that guy with the 90s fashion because that was my youth growing up. And, I still dress like that. And suddenly I see all these kids walking around. I'm like, the fuck are you doing? Like,
Suddenly you're cool again.
well, and it's this idea of what it used to be, not exactly what it used to be,
No, yeah.
And that sort of stuff doesn't appeal to me at all for whatever reason. It's just not my taste. And so things like this kind of make me think of that, where it's trying very hard to convey a vibe, but I'm not connecting with that vibe and I'm not picking up what they're putting down. And there's nothing else going on. So there's nothing else in the film for me to connect to.
Yeah.
And I see that as a failure because
damn,
put some more shit in your film. Like, at least make it an interesting story then for me to follow, even if I don't like the style or whatever.
I don't think the story was ever the point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Like, I get that it's not the point, but that kind of is the reason I don't like it.
do you know this infamous 60s experimental film Wavelength? That's just a static shot zooming in for 45 minutes.
I haven't seen it, but I have heard of it.
You have heard of it, yeah. I think Skinamarink is the millennial version of that. That's kind of a
that's giving me too much credit.
I do not give Wavelength any credit, my guy. I hate Wavelength.
Well, to compare it to something else that's more experimental, when we got the topic of cinematography, one film I mentioned to you, which I said you should go watch anyway, just for the sake of it, is a film called Time Code, which is basically a film that I think was made in early 2000s, late 90s, and the screen is divided into 4 different shots.
Mm-hmm.
And each shot is a single one shot. And basically all 4 shots, it's all kind of half improvised but half planned. And the actors kind of play out the story. So they're in different locations and stuff all the time, or they do cross over at certain times, or they end up in the same location and stuff. But the whole story plays out with 4 different cameras running at all times.
Yeah.
And so the story itself is pretty whatever. Like, it's not why you watch the film, because it kind of just serves a purpose for the film to exist. There are some interesting bits here and there, but ultimately it's not the story that you're going for. It's the technical kind of achievement of doing something a little bit different and experimental. Like, you wouldn't want every film made this way because it's kind of confusing all of the time and you kind of have to watch it multiple times just to pick up on certain things. Plus, the audio mixing must have been a nightmare because they've got 4 feeds of audio that they're balancing out the whole time, trying to give you all the key points without drowning out everything else as well. So it's very impressive in that sense, I think, but it's not a film that I'm like, wow, what a great movie. It's more, that was a cool idea and a cool experiment, and look at that. Cool. But that had a lot more going on than something like Skinamarink.
Yeah. I bet.
Which, because there was actually a story. There were actually decent actors. Like, there are some famous actors in there that you probably know. Like, I think Salma Hayek's in it. There's a dude in it whose name I always forget, but you'd recognize him if you saw him. And, it's a competent movie, if not a very good one. It's decent, but it's not amazing. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
But the point is not for the film itself to be good. It's more the execution to be good. And it is. They nailed it. Like, yeah. So I really appreciate that sort of stuff. And I like that sort of stuff. But again, I think with Skinamarink, especially after your explanation, because prior to that, I didn't even understand that there would be context for this sort of thing that might add to it,
Yeah.
Because I can understand how having that kind of relationship to that moment in time where people made this kind of shit, that makes sense to me. And I'm like, okay, I get it. I can see why you might connect with this a bit.
Yeah.
For someone who has no connection with that sort of thing, nothing for me.
Yeah, I figured.
It's just, I don't think I've been this bored in a movie for that long.
Have you managed to watch this in one sitting, or was it multiple? Yeah. Oh, I'm proud.
I sat down and I watched it. I thought I'm going to do my due diligence. I really didn't want to watch it. I was apprehensive to begin with because I looked at the trailer, or I flicked through the film before I actually watched it.
Yeah.
Just to kind of get a feel for the kind of scary that it is. And this is the kind of thing, when done well, it would scare the fuck out of me. So I was like pretty apprehensive going in, but I'm like, no, I'm going to suck it up and do it, because of, to be able to talk about it mainly.
Yeah.
And I was very disappointed by the end of it to think, I don't know if I've got anything good to say about this movie.
Yeah, I didn't expect you to be honest.
And I really tried. I have to say, honestly, I don't. It's like when I review movies on Letterboxd or something, I try to talk about what I like about it and not just be a whinger complaining about things I didn't like.
Yeah.
Although I might put that in as well. But I try to, and I try to appreciate, like I go into most films wanting to enjoy it, like I'm not the kind of person who goes in, well, yeah, funny that, hey, but, and I'm happy to enjoy things for what they are as well. Like, I think the Marvel movies are shit, but I enjoy them and I have a good time.
Sure.
To me, they're pieces of crap, really. Like, the only good thing they've got going for them are special effects, and that's about it. So, a lot of people disagree with me, and that's fine. But they are basically a roller coaster in a theme park, and that's it.
Right.
I'm in that camp of people who thinks Marvel movies, whatever, they're all crap. Some more enjoyable than others, but I go into each one knowing that anyway, and ready to enjoy myself for what it is. I'm there for the ride. I'm happy to suspend my disbelief and my cynicism and all that kind of thing, and I'm happy to just go along for it. Say, hey guys, take me for a ride. I want a bit of escapism. I want to enjoy myself for the next hour and a half, 2 hours, whatever. Let's do it. And, I have a good time for the most part. And that's how I approach most films. Even this one, I was like, I'm a bit apprehensive, but hey, I'm here for an experience, even if it's going to be, I'm going to get scared and it's not going to be fun. So, but I'm here for it. I'm going to have the experience. I'm going to really know what it was about and, enjoy it as much as I can. And I enjoyed it as much as I can, which was to say not at all.
0. Well, on that note, what grand number would you grant this?
I mean, I have to be honest and say, I'm tossing up whether it's a 1 or a 2 out of 10.
Gotta be a 2 now that you know the context.
Yeah, but I don't have that context. Like, and I think that's valid. It's like, it's like you not necessarily connecting with parts of The Fountain or something. Like,
yeah.
I can tell you how much I connect with it and how much I think it means something. It's not going to change your rating or make you enjoy it more, like that's the thing. Like, intellectually I can appreciate, okay, if that's what they're going for, that kind of niche moment in internet history kind of stuff. And I believe that it was crowdfunded as well, this film.
Could be, yeah.
I think there was a thing in the credits about crowdfunding.
That would make sense, yeah.
So, even more so, I'm happy to say, yeah, cool. If people crowdfunded it and liked it and got what they wanted, fucking A, more power to them. Let's make more of them if they want, But for me personally, my circumstance, my history, my knowledge, lack of, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, at most it's a 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10, sorry. Like, I think 1 star out of 5.
Yeah.
Because I think for me, like, 1 star is I didn't like it, but they made it. Whereas like half a star is I actively hated it. So
yeah,
I don't think I actively hated this film. I just really didn't like it or get anything from it.
But remember the bedroom sequence. Come on, remember the bedroom sequence.
Yeah, but even that, I'm like, yeah, cool, whatever. Like,
damn, bro.
It stood out because it was the only kind of competent piece of narrative in the entire film. Like, there was actually something happening.
No, yeah, that's true. That's true. That's totally true. No, like I said, I cannot be surprised at all. I completely chose this movie, gave it to you, completely expecting you to not give a fuck or not like it at all. But
I mean, even by the token of us talking about it, it's worth it, I think, in my book, because I like it. I like discussing this sort of thing. So, nothing's ever wasted in that sense. And I do apologize. I wish I had liked it more.
No, that's all good.
I got to be honest, and I really didn't. So
it's all good. I think I actually like that we.
But what would you rate it anyway?
Well, Yeah, I'm not like in love with this movie either. Like I said, I don't think it's I think it could be much improved by cutting out a lot of things. And I like the concept more than the product, but or the result more
Yeah.
result than product. So my ranking is more like 6 out of 10 in that direction. I like it, but it's not great as it stands
Yeah.
right now. It's not
Yeah.
amazing.
That's all right.
Yeah, but it is
Mm.
for sure for me a cool example for interesting cinematography.
Well, I think about it as well. Like, I mean, we're going a bit long with this episode, but
Yeah.
I think about other similar things that worked for me that also were kind of in the same kind of indie ballpark kind of thing. Like, do you remember that film that made a big splash when it was made? It was another crowdfunded film called Kung Fury,
Yeah, uh-huh. Short
and it
film,
was
wasn't it?
basically it was about 20 minutes, I think.
Yeah.
It was this over the top, kung fu again, faux nostalgic 80s retro throwback kind of
Yeah,
film.
yeah.
But it was a bunch of people, filmmakers who basically did it on their computers at home and used all these visual effects and stuff to put it together. And it's completely over the top and it's stupid. And the effects are like bad good. And the acting is also bad good.
Yep. Yep.
Like, it's kind of so shit and over the top that it's super enjoyable and a lot of fun. Plus, it's only 20 minutes. So I think that's a great example because if that film was an hour and a half, boy, do I think it would have sucked 10 times more.
Probably, yeah.
Or like it flat out just would have sucked. Whereas as a 20-minute short film, it was awesome and a lot of fun and great and really good proof of concept and like, wow, you guys did all this. This is amazing. Good on you. Cool. Thanks for not wasting my time. Whereas I think one of the key things for Skinamarink, which you mentioned and kind of solidified for me, was, yeah, it's just way too long as well. If this was much shorter, I probably would have had heaps more to say about it and liked it a lot more. But yeah, it wears out its welcome real quick for me.
I like that they had the balls though to still do it. I don't know. Something like that.
Yeah, there's balls and there's balls,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
they're not doing anything daring. So that's the thing as well. Like, none of it's felt new to me. None of it felt like original.
It did to me.
It felt like any other kind of found footage film. Like, I've seen this before kind of thing. And yeah, anyway, I've said enough.
Oh, well.
The real question though,
Oh God, is
would you rather be stuck in a house at night as a little kid or
be immortal?
be immortal and have to deal with all the ups and downs of that
Jesus
journey?
fucking Christ, dog. Good Lord. I was afraid you're gonna ask that.
Of course.
Fuck. I think I would probably choose the burden of immortality and then regret it. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah, no, I think I would take immortality. Unfortunately.
I would
What about
absolutely
you, though?
take immortality.
No, why is that such an no? It's not that easy. Immortality sucks
is.
ass. It's the worst.
I'm not saying it would be amazing, but I've had those nightmares of those little kids. I don't want to be there again.
But you're once the universe dies, you're gonna be in the same position, floating in like empty universe nothingness for like millions of years. Like
Yeah.
you're not escaping that.
I like to think maybe I'd reach some kind of enlightenment.
Well, sure.
In that, infinite time.
Well, you can only hope.
I
and
mean,
wait.
better than being stuck in a house scared shitless, I think.
I guess, but they had Legos. Sure. I'm glad we settled
Anyway.
that debate.
I mean, you chose immortality as well.
Yeah, I know it's true, but yeah, that's probably the most difficult question yet for me.
Yeah.
Okay, good. I think it's time to spin the wheel and get out of here, huh?
Yep. Let's see what's happening next time.
So again, as always, if you're listening to this still for some reason, just you can plant your own funky little opinions and ideas in whatever comment section you choose. We might see it. And I'm gonna spin the wheel to see what random theme or subject we're gonna be focusing on in the next episode. and the wheel has chosen movies where evil wins.
Wait,
Spoiler
what?
alert, I guess.
Where evil wins.
Evil wins.
Okay.
This was a listener suggestion from Marisa, aka Japani Caddy. So here's that shout out.
Nice. Thanks, Marissa. Nothing jumps to mind, I have to say.
It's kind of good though. We haven't had like a narrowed, focused theme in a while. The last ones were all very broad, so maybe this is a good thing.
Well, and very plot focused as well.
Yeah.
Maybe what's that Avengers one where Thanos wins, basically?
We're not watching an MCU film. Shut up. Oh my god. Unless it's Ant-Man, but not evil doesn't win in there. I think
that's the only one I can think of, really.
I think there's another good chance for horror again, so I'm sorry in advance. Yeah. Evil likes to win in that.
Like, every fucking movie is a horror.
Yeah, because it's a good genre.
So shit.
I love that.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I appreciate the like good horror storytelling / movies / whatever. I can appreciate. I think it's really good medium. I just don't like being scared. That's as simple as it goes.
Oh, well.
So it's like some people ride roller coasters. They love the adrenaline rush. So other people don't.
But what horror movies
That's what it's
really
like with
scary,
horror for
though?
me.
I don't know.
Although I've seen a lot of them, to be fair. But anyway.
Yeah.
Like, enough. I feel like I've seen enough to have an opinion that I don't want to see anymore.
Sure. All right.
You know. But yeah. Shall we call it a day?
Yes, this is it. Run away, little children. It's over. Don't get stuck in apartments and don't chase immortality. It's all bad.
Watch Skinamarink on like triple speed.
Oh
that
no!
Might make it
Shut up!
More enjoyable.
Just skip to the bedroom sequence, and that's it. Done.
Well, that sounds a bit sus, but yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Any last words?
Cool.
From you? No.
Not really. I wish I liked it more, but I didn't. So
it's good. That's fine.
But The Fountain is amazing, so go watch The Fountain.
Sure, whatever. All right, let's kill this episode. Bye-bye, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening.
Till next time.
Bye-bye.